Thank you for listening to Paper Girl Podcast. This is a podcast for readers, writers, creatives, anyone in the book scene in Tulsa. My name is Melody Coulter. I'm the host. I am the co-owner of Meadow Market Books in Tulsa, and I am joined today by two folks representing something involving a mailbox, which is the title, not me kind of moving roundabouts. I have Brutus and Dolly with me. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
I'm Brutus. I started SIAMB, something involving a mailbox, in 2009. Yeah, in 2009. And it was just a zine at that point, and we've kind of, as I've gone through the years, I've been trying to decide what to do with it and what new projects I want to take on. And so it turned into a literary magazine for a little while, and then it turned into what, in its current form, with Dolly as like a micro press. So it's been a fun game of writing and then moving more towards editing and getting to read a bunch of other people's work to bring it in.
Nice.
And I'm Dolly. You might see my pen name out there more often for SIAMB Marise. I joined 2022, I think. I had just started my writing club in Tulsa, and Brutus pulled me aside after to ask if we could get coffee to see if I had any ideas on how to help a micropress succeed. And I was like, of course I do. I'd never heard of a micropress before, didn't know at all what I was talking about, spent 4 hours researching heavily, showed up for the meeting, talked the whole time. I think you said maybe 2 words, explained what I had learned, my ideas, and then Brutus said, do you want to do it? Yeah. So we've been working together since.
Sounds like my energy, like I have something percolating maybe in the back of my mind, and then someone's like, what if? And I'm like, all right, here's a ton of research, and then I'm going to yap about it, and then we're going to make it happen. So I think we're going to approach this kind of linearly, because I want to know more. That's like a 13-year gap of you running SIAMB. It started as a zine. Let's start there.
Yeah. So my initial kind of inspiration for it was old punk zines in around the Bay Area, and specifically Aaron Comet Bus. I got the Omnibus when I was, I guess, end of high school, middle of high school. My friend Corey's older brother had gone to college and came back to my tiny little town with punk culture from out in the world. And so I got a hold of that, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. People are having adventures. They're like hitchhiking and, hanging out with random people that they meet. And that kind of reading those stories reminded me that like the adventure exists in the world. And before that, I'd read a lot of like Dragonlance, and I was very into fantasy and sci-fi and stuff. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, we can have adventures here. This is fantastic.
You are the adventure type.
So Sam was really like, in those days, was looking at what Aaron had done and been like, I want to do that. I want to, whatever that kind of looks like. And it admittedly looked very different. I wasn't plugged into a music scene. I wasn't quite having the same adventures. I've never really been that good at like writing about myself in this kind of like raw like moment of like, I'm just gonna tell you this story that I did. And so it had a lot more like poetry and like kind of targeted snapshots of moments that I had with people. And yeah, it was a long time. I think I did, cause SIAMB 7. So really I only did 6 between 2009 and 2021, which is when the first literary magazine, number 7, came out. So there was, I think the whole time I was in college in Santa Cruz, I was on a hiatus. I don't think I published one there. But then I got to Colorado, and I was bored not bored, but I was operating as a grad student and needed in physics, and I needed an outlet. And so I started doing much more there.
Yeah. So you got from California to Colorado. How did you end up in Tulsa?
I was back in California in 2021, kind of right around the time that I was putting together the literary magazine, number 7. And And I'd run into it's somewhere I'd run into the Tulsa remote program, and that's how I wound up in Tulsa. And I was hanging out, living in a van in Southern California, and they're like, "Yeah, come check Tulsa out." And I was like, "Yeah, I should go check Tulsa out." I have no idea what it is over there. And I showed up here in 2021, and I've adored it ever since. And so I've been here ever since.
Love that. Kayla's a Tulsa remoter too, so you got involved in a writing club, and then that's how Dolly comes into the picture. Want to talk about this writing club?
Yeah, so I had originally walked into Woody Books in
Rest in
Kendall Whittier.
peace.
Yeah, rest in peace. This was when they were still next to the Whittier before they had moved down the street. And I walked in and I was like, "Hey, you all know of any like writing clubs or anything around town?" And I forget who was behind at the desk at the time, but they're like, "Not really." I was like, "That's unfortunate." And I think I picked up a book and then wandered off to whatever show I was going to see at Whittier or whatever. And then I came back into Witty Books, a month later or something, and there was a flyer for the Witty Writers Club. And I was like, "Oh, what's this? I'm going to go check this out."
Look who manifested something.
Yeah, we had the opposite approach. I went in, I had just moved here. I'd been there for like a couple weeks and I was desperate for friends and went in, asked for a writing club. They said there wasn't one. And I walked home and then I did a whole proposal on why I should start the writing club and here's how I would run it and here's how it would go. And then emailed the owner and was like, "Hey, would you be interested in hearing me out on this?" So
I love that. So you like spoke Dolly into coming in and looking for I love this. So you started a writing club. Why were you looking for one?
At the time, I was working as a freelance writer and editor, and it just seemed like I had run an environmental action club when I was living in Wichita, Kansas, a youth nonprofit organization. And I wanted to try something that was less activist heavy and more community based. I think I had the most success when it came to bringing people together. And frankly, I needed friends. I wanted a writing club. I'd looked up a ton when I moved to Tulsa, and most of them were defunct or not accepting new members. So it seemed like the right opportunity for me.
Yeah.
I wanted nerd friends. Let's just be real. I wanted nerd friends.
I started a nonprofit to teach improv around Tulsa, and it was because all of my friends were improv friends. And so when I left the theater I was at, I was like, "Oh no, how do I see my friends?"
Exactly.
Because we would get together for non-improv things, but we all had the itch to do it still. And so you start what you need when you can't find what you need.
Find a way, make the way.
So you made your way to writing club. How long before you were like, let's get Dolly into SIAMB?
First meeting. You came to the very first meeting of the club
Immediately.
and asked me right afterwards, and I was terrified.
You're like, "Dolly, get shit done."
I mean, that was a huge part of it, is that I had walked in looking for a club, and then, I didn't have the bandwidth or the thought to make one. And Dolly had walked in and not seen one and been like, "Well, I should start one then." And I was like, I mean, that's exactly what I want to work with SIAMB. So that's it's a perfect resume, really.
So when you asked her, "What are you thinking about for a micro press?" What were you looking for?
Someone to bounce ideas off of and someone to help me read and just kind of stay motivated. You came in on 9, right?
Yeah.
The yellow cover. Yeah. So I had done 7 mostly by myself, and then I'd done 8, and I think I'd reached out I think I'd had posts on Instagram and had random readers from a number of places.
You had global guest editors for a while there.
Yeah, which was really fun. It was difficult to be organized, and I still ended up doing a lot of the work, and it was great to have other voices, but I didn't feel like I had the same connection and motivation. And I was like, all right, I would love to find somebody local that wants to work on this and that is passionate about this kind of idea. and Dolly was just the immediate obvious, possibility for that.
I love that. What did you find in all of your research to bring to this meeting?
Oh, I did a lot.
Strap in.
I first had to learn what a micropress was. I had no idea what he was talking about and read all about them.
And what did you find for the
incredibly small, low budget, were, essentially DIY. I like to say we put the ass in classy in terms of sometimes it's got to get done and we'll figure out the way. But really he was asking, how can we bring the micropress into Tulsa and make it more of a local communal event? Because you were doing global calls at the time. So it was managing a lot of authors, a lot of writers, but not actually getting to meet anybody. You're shipping out copies, but you don't get to establish that personal connection with them. So my pitch was a Tulsa-only journal, which ended up becoming Scissortail Sings, Solitude and Friends. And it just kind of started. I couldn't believe it when he asked me if I wanted to do it. I figured I was just pitching him an idea for him to take and run, and I never thought I'd be in a publisher's position, but here we are. I'd like to think baby Dolly would be very proud.
I believe it. So take me into like the whole process of putting together Scissortail Sings, Solitude and Friends.
There were handbills.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah, because we still have some.
I have hundreds, in fact. Yes.
Yeah. So we printed a bunch of handbills. So the first thing was like I think our main pitch was we don't know where the writers are in Tulsa and we need to find them. Mm-hmm. And so that was a big pitch of ours, like, hi, we want to publish you. If you already exist and you're doing stuff, please tell us because we haven't found you.
Yeah.
And it was, and so that pitch was trying to bring writers together in Tulsa to collect a single object that everyone was involved in. I think, what was our promo? I think it was the handbills and Instagram.
Handbills, Instagram, and we were specifically targeting untold stories. So we wanted to hear from Tulsa authors, but also Tulsa voices that may not be at the forefront. I remember I was curious about meeting Tulsa writers, but also I was brand new to Tulsa. I didn't know what this town was like. I didn't know what it had to offer. And I was kind of curious about just the history of itself and seeing what people would bring up. And we also had a ton of visual contributors in there too. It wasn't just solely written work.
So you solicited all of this work and then the work of figuring out what goes in and what should be like held for another time, or what was that like?
Interesting. It was our first time working together, so figuring out our individual tastes and then trying to define what SIAMB's taste was going to be for this issue. And we actually wound up stucking an entire zine in the center of it. So we had written and visual work at the beginning, and then this zine done by Vanya, who's just an incredible artist, about what their experience was like during the pandemic and how they dealt with the isolation, and then ended it with more writing. So it's kind of a weird present in the middle, if you will.
Yeah. And I thought of that, like, as far as building it out, I was like, because we had a number of submissions and we had that one. And I was like, well, either we have to go like format wise, because it was a square, her zine was a square zine. And so I was like, okay, well, the way we make this work is that we build around that. And it had a great name of Solitude. Mm-hmm. And what we were doing was trying to collect all these things together. So Solitude and Friends was like, a perfect building block for, what the object would become and also what we were trying to do in the first place. Then it was formatting, getting everything, once we found all the pieces that we liked and got together, then it was formatting and trying to figure out how to put them on the page that looked good.
And then a very interesting launch party, if you'll remember, but met some great people that have continued to be in our circle and maybe even published more of. So I'd say it was a success overall.
Yeah.
It's a unique publication. It definitely stands out despite being smaller. It's for a small square. There's no visual. But small square, spiral bound. What was the decision-making process for picking that particular... I'm trying to think of the word. It's not coming to me. I want to say format, but it's not quite what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But...
So, the size actually dictated that we couldn't perfect bind it.
Yes.
which was a fun moment. Yeah, so the dimensions were slightly too small for it to be bound. So we did that. We printed it with Flash Flood did all the black and white inside. And then Ricardo from Skewed Press, who's now Friendship Print Guild at Mixed Use Space Tulsa, where we have a space, did the cover. And it's a risograph, which is kind of like the baby that a printer and a screen printer would have if you put them together. So it does like layer by layer of different colors. But it gives you I really love the feel of it. It feels very much like there's something very like homey about it, I think. And it still feels very like DIY. And this is, an object that somebody crafted that I love.
And you can't get those colors without a risograph.
Yeah.
It's unique and it's outstanding. And since then, you mentioned that at the launch party, you met people and you've published them. You guys have done some like slightly more traditional publishing of some of the artists around Tulsa. What was where did you take the first inspiration from for that?
For moving into like the traditional books. Yeah. Honestly, a lot of that came from the amount of work that we had to do to make a literary journal. I had gone through 7, 8, and 9 were the main ones that we'd done global submissions via Submittable. And it's fantastic to get so many different varied voices in. And it's also running through so many submissions that you have to like read through.
Yes, and getting them to send in their contracts on time, and you know what it's like dealing with artists, and then you put 20 in a book and it gets overwhelming very fast.
So from that, and especially wanting to move SIAMB in a way that it was more like sustainable for us to work on, and was a little more, was still going to like put our artist first. I think moving to single author books made a lot of sense in that context.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
We were also interested in, because we had done Sister Tale Sings and wanted to connect more with Tulsa people and work with individuals, and then also see where that would take us next in terms of building community, which we've kind of transitioned into the symposiums. Yeah.
So who was the first author that you published in a single publication?
I think Sam or Jess.
Sam and Jess, yeah. And they came, and they launched at the same time, which was fun.
Yeah. So they had Words My Friends Have Thrown Away, and was that
Starman
Poems?
Yeah.
Yes. So was like a particular standout, or were they just like the first ones that were like, also, yes, we want to work with you just as much as you want to work with us?
I think we definitely wanted to work with them. We knew Jess from
Horns and Rattles.
From Horns and Rattle, yeah. And from her other work, her YA novels and stuff. Mm-hmm. And Sam was that through the writing club?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Sam came through Witty Writers.
Yeah. And they were both already working on, they like already had drafts that they were putting together. And that was, I think, something that made it easy for them to be kind of the first people to work with. Was like, we already liked their work. We knew that we liked their work. And they had their next draft, like, kind of ready to go.
Like, a really good process, like, to start working with, like, a publisher. And, yeah. I love that.
And we were seeking chapbooks at the time, which put us in the interesting position of, if you have something weird that might not get published elsewhere because it's too short or it's too long or it's in this funky format, chances are we can take it. So I think that's part of why we landed words and the blackout poetry, because few people are publishing sci-fi blackout poetry at this point in time. Erroneously. if you
It's
ask
not
me.
the best selling like oversaturated market.
Who'da thunk?
It's the underground New York Times bestsellers. It's the separate one. You have to get the crypto dark web to get there.
I love it. So now you guys have quite a little. You take up quite a shocking amount of space for just like one press, and a press that started as Zines and works in chapbooks, because like This Land, of course, is the bigger publisher on the local shelf, but then you guys take up just as much as Horns and Rattle does. What's that journey been like, getting new faces into your circle? And
Last year was crazy.
Yeah. But it was also, I don't think we knew exactly how crazy it was going to be and how busy, but we did kind of set ourselves up for that, and that was intentional. I think actually, now that I remember right, we had the chapbook promo, which was a little zine we put together.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and we each put in a story, and we're like, hey, this is our writing. This is who your editors would be. You don't have to write what we're writing, but, just to give you an idea.
Meet us.
Yeah, meet us. And part of that whole process, the point of that, of working with local artists that we knew, was to make it easier to communicate while we were figuring out how do we put a book together.
Yeah.
And get that process down.
And then we went to Paris, and things just kind of exploded, and it got really busy and really great.
how did the international travel impact SIAMB?
Well, Brutus got an email about the Paris Ass Book Fair and sent me a text like, hey, why don't we just submit and see what happens? And then we got in, and suddenly we were faced with an expensive international work trip and made it happen. Made it happen.
I love that. It's like on a whim. We did a New York City improv festival that we were like, should we submit? And like the next day, because submissions closed the day after we had, and they're like, hey, you're in. And we're like, oh, great. All of a sudden, we are now having to pay for a trip to New York City.
Exactly.
To go do 20 minutes of improv. But it was a work trip in a sense, because we do work in an improv space, but like getting to be around other people who work in that craft is really like major for changing how you do your art, and like, a little bit of a different experience to be studying the craft. So what was that like for y'all?
It was really fun in getting to see what other people had made. It was much more of an art book and art fair than it was like written like literature, which we didn't know when we went, and it was very fun to be there and be like, oh, we are.
I think we were one of 2 or 3 booksellers, just strictly booksellers.
Yeah. And we're like, wow, we stick out great. We're from Oklahoma in the middle of Paris. We have,
Yes.
books just full of words in English. We were sandwiched between, actually one that was largely books of text, and it was queer erotica from historical, out of print queer erotica from Paris, dating all the way back to like the French Revolution.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
So you obviously came home with like an armful of out of print queer historic erotica.
He did. Yeah.
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 I mean, when are you going to run into that again?
Yeah.
To be fair, it's in French, so you might have to lend it to Sage and I to translate for you.
And on the other side, we had a very arresting coffee book of queer parties out of I think London.
In the UK, yeah.
Yeah,
Shout out
Ireland
to
and London.
Smut Press. If you're ever looking for a queer party in the UK, look them up. They host these big, beautiful queer bashes, and then they photograph them and turn them into these like amazing celebrations of queer joy, and it's just very horny and very fun.
That's amazing.
So cool.
And
And they
so-
loved Enya.
So you,
I've never heard anybody speak so much about Enya. It was educational.
man, in 2025 too.
They were diehard Enya fans. Yes.
Take it. So that's what's coming up next for SIAMB, right? Is a coffee table book of historic erotica and party pictures.
Okay, but we have talked about the ABCs of kinky consensual fetish sex, and I would love to make that happen if we could work with a local illustrator. I kept telling Brutus at the book fair, we just weren't selling sex. It's just, we need something, just one thing in our market for those kinds of book fairs.
Just a little sex.
A little something. Yeah.
I love it. But so when you came back and you looked at what was coming up for you, what really did, like, what stood out to you about how you wanted to take the press going forward?
I think a large part coming back was realizing how we needed a catalog that kind of had some sort of branding so that we could really set ourselves up and be like, this is SIAMB. These are the books that we're publishing. And I think, I think part of that has been our, slow accumulation of just titles in our catalog. To have a collection that you can look at and say like, oh, okay, I see what you're publishing now, and I see, you have like a catalog that's not like just the 2 books that you last published kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Which then led to some very interesting conflict and discussion surrounding like, well, what does SIAMB's new visual branding look like? Do we want to create some kind of cohesion between all of our covers? Do we like my dream is for the mailbox to be on the spine. This is I don't care about the covers. I want the mailbox on the spine. But it really did force us to kind of think more about what we as publishers also need to be putting in. It's not just the author's work now. It's also coming through SIAMB. And how can we work together to make sure it reflects what you want it to reflect and that it still fits within our catalog, our library.
I love that. So are there any projects that you guys are getting ready to put out that you want to like shout out? I know you feel like you got to keep things under wraps. Like we don't have to, but
so we've got a number of, 2025 we had reached out and tried to do chapbooks, right? Well, I mean, we did. We published what, 4
or 5?
5?
Yeah, 4 or 5. We haven't even talked about Jourdain. Yeah.
So we did, and we got those books together. And then for 2026, we were like, okay, we also have a large backlog or not backlog, but a bunch of authors we've worked with in the literary press that we really liked. And so we've been reaching out slowly to authors and navigating, like, putting a collection of what they had printed previously, either a collection of poetry, a collection of short stories, etc. And we have a chapbook novel, a horror novel that we have been working with for now over a year.
Yeah.
So, and
set in Oklahoma.
oh,
I know.
Yeah.
She uses the like tornadoes and the spooky green sky so well. Oklahoma is perfect for horror.
it really is. We have like a sort of like it has a true crimey feel, done by a guy who left Tulsa, but it's set in Oklahoma, and I'm like, Oklahoma just like historically has such like fertile soil for really tapping into so many different horror genres. It's like that's exciting to hear the tornadoes be part of the horror.
Huge part of it. So that has been a blast to work on and a very different process than what we've been doing before. We've actually been developmental editing the book with her, the manuscript, and I'm not sure we'll do that every time. It takes a lot of time. Again, a year and a half trying to get a book published, and we're not quite there yet. And I think this was what we wanted before, right? Was to develop an intimate one-on-one relationship with an author and see where this will go.
Yeah. And also really getting, developing that relationship and being able to have the conversation with the author of like, here's what we're reading. Here's our outside voice coming back to your manuscript, and making sure that, the author can take that, play with the internal voice that, dictates what book the author's trying to make and balance that out to make it the best version of that author's book. And that's been a really, it's been really, what's the very positive, exciting word? That I'm looking for?
Satisfying.
Yeah, satisfying.
Yeah.
It's been really satisfying to have that rapport back and forth on this book.
Brutus and I often complain about defenders. I don't know if you're there, if you know what we're talking about, but the people who, when you give them feedback on their writing, just explain the choices they make without actually taking in. Well, it's great that you know that as the writer, but I'm telling you as the reader that I did not know that.
I'm going to be honest. I am so scared that I would be a defender that's why I've just independently published things. I'm like, I don't know how much feedback I can take. I had Jared read because I need to order more copies of my book. And I was like, well, I want to change the cover anyway because I didn't put a synopsis on the back. So it just, you pick it up and you're like, what is this about? And then I have to like, so this is what this book is about. And then it outs me as the author. And I'm like, I'm not trying to pressure you to buy it. All of that to say that like he gave it a read and he made some notes and like had some comments. And I was like, thank you for your feedback.
It's painful. Oh my God, because it's your writing. It's so personal to you. It's incredibly painful. I host writing workshops in my club, and I have a rule where for the first 5 minutes, the author cannot talk. And I think that takes away some of the pressure to defend, and it just gives the readers time to bounce back and forth. So hopefully the author gets a decent idea of what they picked up on and what they didn't before they can come in and ask those questions. There's a way.
Yeah.
There's a way.
We can get there. We'll get there eventually.
I have so much faith in you, and I'd love to read your book.
Oh, thank you. I'm proud of it. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And going into, I have 2 that I'm working on right now, and like plotting them out. First of all, I plotted them out. This one was a pants novel, and then the rest of them have been plotted and like very intentional, and I'm going very slowly, and I'm like, remember the lessons we learned. So it's very much that this is baby's first novel, but like, I'm really happy with how it turned out. All that to say, I lost my full train of thought. I wanted to ask a little bit, like, I don't love the like gatekeepy, you have to study X thing in order to be in that field, right? Like, I have a library degree, and that's a conversation we have a lot of times in the library space, is like, should you have to have a library degree to be a librarian? You have a physics degree. What gives you the audacity to be a publisher?
This is a question I've asked a number of times, especially early on before Dolly and I had really started with SIAMB, is that I was really self-conscious about asking to publish somebody's work, because I'm like, I have a budget for 100 copies, and I have absolutely zero marketing plan whatsoever for your book. Do you want to give me your book? And I'd asked, I forget which event it was at Woody Books. I think I asked it like a couple times at different ones, and every time between authors and people who had published, like the answer that came back always was, that's on them, and they'll be excited that you want to like publish them, right? And if they are at a level where they're like, I'm going to publish this, with this much marketing and this much, stature for the publisher, they'll know and they'll tell you. And we have that conversation happening right now with some of the people we reached out to. They're like, yeah, what's the marketing budget look like? What are we doing here?
And thankfully now we do kind of have a marketing budget.
Now we have
plan.
plans.
Yes.
No, I love that. Like having the faith in your work, or just being like, hey, I've got an opportunity to platform you in some way. Is that okay? And then letting the artist be like, yeah, that's great. Because 9 times out of 10, they are amped for it. I'm like, I got a tiny little bookstore. Will you put your book on my shelf? And every time they're like, you want me to put my book on your shelf? And I'm like, it's literally just a piece of wood I painted. Will you let people look at it on your shelf? And they're like, yes. How many copies do you need? I'm like, this is fantastic. So I know, I love that. And like, that's exciting. And I'm guessing you probably still work in the physics space, or did you?
Kind of. I left the PhD program when it wasn't kind of going the direction. I was looking at where my professor was and the other like recent graduates getting postdocs, and I was like, I'm not as excited about what life looks like as a PhD physics PhD person. I would love to have been able to go back and teach community college, but
You would be a great teacher. Yes,
it would be really fun. I would love it.
Dr. Brutus.
It's gonna be real hard to get one with just a master's in applied math, but yeah. So no, now I work in engineering and software engineering because that's where we all wind up. But it is, it's still the fun puzzles it's similar enough puzzles to math and physics, so I still like that. And it pays bills a little bit, with some extra for running SIAM and
Yeah,
trying
so
to figure that out.
feed the brain, feed the body, and then feed the soul with SIAM, and that's
Yeah.
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 What about you, Dolly? What experience did you bring to this world? And
How honest should we be? I entered SIAM with incredible amounts of imposter syndrome. I was very young when I moved here and started this club, and I assumed it was going to be a bunch of college-age students like me because the bookstore was right next to University of Tulsa. And when I started it, I had a bunch of 30-year-olds who all had master's degrees, and I felt so unqualified. So even though I had been working in the writing space for over a year at that point, I still felt new. I mean, when you're a new freelancer, you spend your first 2 or 3 months just trying to get a client. You're not really working at that point. You're just applying. So I was bringing my experience there. But before that, I had worked as a farmer and groundskeeper, and I had also worked on a political campaign. So
so you're used to wrangling things that are hard to wrangle.
A little bit. I get bored. I like to try new things. Yeah.
I love that. So another thing that you guys are working with SIAM is the SIAM Second Saturday Symposium series.
Well done.
Did I get all 5 S's?
Yep.
Yes.
It's a difficult one.
Yeah, I think that is 5.
SIAM Second Saturday Symposium series. Yeah, I mean, it's turned into a series.
Yeah. Yes.
Which has been ongoing for
September
6 months?
was the first one? September,
7
October,
months? Yeah.
August? Yeah,
Something
6
like
months.
that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. Because Must has only been open about that long, haven't they?
No, they've been open for a
longer.
year.
Because
Yeah,
we moved
2
in
years.
right after Woody Books closed.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I think I'm getting the timeline mixed with when Flash Flood closed and Friendship moved into Must.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Because they had originally the people from Flash Flood were like, we need like real taste space because they're all artists, they're all fantastic artists, and they're like, we want a place that like we can have our workshops. They all had studio spaces in various places around town. There was no like central retail space for them. They would have art crawls at their studio spaces, but like, one of them was, like 4 miles west of downtown, so it's hard to get people out to them. And so they really started this originally as, studio space for artists to be working in the same place. And then when Flash Flood closed, it has now transformed into largely Friendship Print Guild, that they operate out of that. And then, the rest of us are around, which is actually kind of really nice because it puts Must on a bit more financial footing, I think, than the original plan was.
Which, speaking of, if you've never been to Must before, you should absolutely check it out.
Yeah.
Great shopping, fun events.
Did you guys make it out to Deadly Prey? Oh my god!
I did not. I was trying to, and I have been, the last couple of weeks have been absurdly busy. But.
Well, I can't believe that our Monday was free to go. But Ganyan Cinema, Mobile Cinema, they went out to rural communities that didn't have power, and they would bring generators, and they would show like Hollywood blockbusters and popular TV shows.
Cool.
They had no budget to advertise these things. So they would commission artists in Ghana to do like on these like flour sacks, stitched posters, paintings, advertising these films. And they would give them like a couple of stills from the film and like a vague idea of what was going on. But for the large part, these artists did not know what was going on. And they would paint these like crazy good posters that just sometimes were like pretty close to the film, especially if it was like a horror film. But like, I've got a poster for Elf that has the elves at Santa's workshop, but there's like a spike through one of their heads. Just absolutely off the rails. The Clockwork Orange poster is just like giant dicks everywhere.
That perfect for Paris.
It's exactly how the film is. And so they have this massive collection of all of these posters, and they take commissions now and like all of this. So it was dope as hell because like Must like brought in this gallery. All of the profits go back to the artists and all of that. But they had the giant like original posters were hung up, and you could like there were a bunch just sitting out on a table that you could kind of sift through. You could buy the originals. They had lots of prints and stickers and like a coffee table book that explained each of the artists and like
amazing
their experiences. It was absolutely crazy cool. And then the African Delights food truck was there, and I was like, I have a friend that I met in college, and he was French Congolese. Mm-hmm. So it all comes back to France, right? And he did a cooking column for the OU Daily, and I did photographs for his column. And I had a dish from the truck on Monday that reminded me of being in his apartment cooking this fried plantain peanut butter dish. That was like a memory from 15 years ago just whopped right back into my brain. It was incredible. All that to say, like, Must puts on a really fucking fun event. Yeah. And so you guys are there every second Saturday putting together events for creatives. So how did this come about?
Yeah. This kind of, it's an additional variation on the theme, which I feel like is trying to get people in Tulsa together. And specifically around the literary world, because it's overall it's a small one, and it's also an easy one to leave disparate, with people, writing in your own coffee shop, and it takes work because it's a rather private affair generally with what you're doing, and it's really helpful to know who else is around, and to have community in that. And our plan was, to really have a platform that was ongoing, that people could come into and plug into, as whatever projects are happening in Tulsa.
I'm going to disagree with you slightly, just slightly, in that I think writing gets a really bad rep as a solitary activity and passion and job. And my favorite part of a book is the acknowledgement section. I read every acknowledgement section. They make me so happy because it's the first time you get to hear the author's actual voice and not the tone that they're putting on for the book. And they're usually about 2 pages, and it's just a list of people. It's all of the people that it required to get this book here in front of you, which goes to show that was not just one person. That was not just the name on the book cover. So that's part of what I was trying to accomplish with my club, was to make sure people wouldn't fall back into those solitary habits and know writing does happen in community, and to expand on that, not just in Tulsa, right? Like the big goal is to connect Canada to Mexico. We want to be the literary trail all the way up to Chicago, down through Texas. We would like to be in bookstores all across there, and hopefully get people coming into these events just to meet other cool, crazy writers.
I love it. That's it's something that comes up a lot in this podcast, is like how solitary writing feels, but then you realize like I can't do this without a ton of people. And then like it's very easy, especially in Tulsa, I think as soon as you say, hey, is there a writing club around here, that the universe pulls in this community, and that, in my experience, it's been a very welcoming and very excited community where everybody's just like lifting each other up, and I think that's really dope. So
I'm not sure what it is about Tulsa, but the arts and writing scene here is truly amazing. I mean, I was not expecting that when we moved here.
You know, something Oklahoma standard. I've been in Oklahoma for 15 years, 16 years now. And, you know, for all of Oklahoma's flaws, when you find the good people are like really good. So,
Yeah, and I think something that has kept me in Tulsa has hugely been the music scene, and it's I would love to see the literary scene kind of blossom in the same way that I've seen the music scene in Tulsa.
for sure.
And I think part of that is because we are 10 hours from a bunch of massive hubs. You have Austin, you have NOLA, you have Denver, you have Chicago, you have Nashville. And that also means that people are going from Nashville to Denver have the opportunity to pass through Tulsa or down to Texas. And so I've seen so many fantastic acts come through, which I adore, and I'd love to go see them. And I would love to figure out how do we plug that into the literary world. And I think, the dream for Second Saturday Symposium is to have that as a known stop that people can come through.
Hey, that is super cool. Well, we're kind of nearing the end of our journey together through SIAMB. And so I like to finish off with asking, what is something that has surprised you or really excited you as you've kind of come into Tulsa's literary scene?
Can I be honest? That they allow me to do whatever the fuck I want, frankly. I showed up.
It's a town of enablers, man.
I know.
You're like, I want to do a thing, and everyone's like, yeah,
Exactly.
dude, go for it.
I want to start a writing club. Great, start the writing club. I'd love to do this Tulsa-themed literary magazine with you. Yeah, let's do it. Should we just go to Paris? I guess so. There seems to be a real energy here of, might as well. Why not? See what happens. And I appreciate that other people are willing to, like, I'm looking at Jess McCutcheon's work right there with the little baby toadstools. It's everywhere. Once you're plugged in, you can see it everywhere.
Yeah, and I think the caliber is, the caliber of artists and writers that are in Tulsa is really high. I had a friend of mine who has ended up moving, but they used to just say all the time, like, Tulsa Punch is way above its weight class, like, with different stuff that was going on.
We have an opera and a ballet. Why?
Hell yeah.
Again, it's Oklahoma. It makes no sense.
Don't question it too hard.
I'm so grateful for it. So grateful. They're doing Pirates of Penzance. We're going.
Yeah, all right. Let's do it.
Incredible. Just like the way that like arts come together, and like the more formalized like opera and ballet, but even like, have you gotten to see the People's Orchestra perform?
No, but I have been so desperate to go. Are they good?
So wonderful.
I've always been busy.
And it's just like wonderful, just like people who like learned an instrument in like high school and maybe college, and then like just get back and start playing again, and it's awesome. And like there's a ton of support for like, if you want to do theater, you're gonna find somebody who's like, yeah, let's do theater, let's go find a venue and put on a play. And like, I've been in 4 shows now with a group that's just like 2 dudes who were like, we want to put on plays and we don't want to try to break into what they feel is very cliquey sometimes, but they were like, we'll just put one together. And everybody's been like, hell yeah. If we don't have a show, we'll be at your show. So.
Creativity is accessible.
For a small play, if you're ever interested in doing a single night play, I do at Whittier Bar. I do the zine release for Toyota Nights, just a monthly zine. And historically, it's largely been music, but I would love to get theater in there.
Perfect.
So,
once upon a time, Brutus and I were thinking about opening up a tomato stage in his backyard. So maybe we'll make that happen for a symposium.
Yeah.
I love it. I see that in the future. Well, thank you both so much for being on the pod and hanging out and having your stuff on our shelves.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for holding our books on your shelves.
Yeah,
Of
absolutely.
course. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, thanks for having this space. I'm very excited for I love this little space.
It's a great opportunity. We had a comedy show in here last week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we rented 15 folding chairs and we had a comedy show in here, and we're going to do it again in March, and we're going to do it again in April. We bought chairs now, so we're like, we could do it once, we're going to do it again.
I think you were meant to do this.
I think this is, everything in my life is just kind of like very suspiciously routed right here. So it's good stuff. Next up on the pod, we have Iman Christians. I just finished reading her. It's not on the shelf right now because it's sold out, because I was selling it as I was reading it. This incredible romantasy that just like Fourth Wing Who, we don't know her. This book. So Amon's going to be on the podcast next week, and it's going to be a great old time. But you can check out SIAMB's work here. You can check it out. What's your website?
SIAMZine.com.
SIAMZine.com. You can find them on the social media, and you can find them at Mixed Use Space Tulsa in the Kendall Whittier District of Tulsa every second Saturday. You guys start that off at what, 10 a.m.?
2
to 5.
2 to 5. I don't know why I have 10 in my brain. 2 to 5 p.m. over at Must. And thank you so much for listening.